Hello and welcome back to another episode of the In the Game podcast. I'm your host, Bryan Clinton. I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Joe Tillery. It's rankings week. EA Sports College Football 25 has given us a lot to digest this week. Lots of rankings, lots of ratings. And Joe, we've got 3 weeks until this game comes out. I'm as excited as ever, but they gave us a little bit to pause on this week. So really interested for this conversation. But before we jump in, how's Joe? How's life?
It's good, man. I'm doing well. This week has definitely tested my patience a little bit with some of these numbers. We'll talk about it here in a bit, but I'm doing good, man. I'm excited to talk today as always, and I'm ready to get into things.
Well, let's just kind of jump right in. We'll go in chronological order. The first thing of the three things we're going to talk about, this is kind of, I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say here, but the sights and sounds part wasn't necessarily a rankings, as it was part of rankings week, but it was really exciting to see the game kind of in action, seeing some fan bases, seeing some music, the Mo Bamba recreation of the Penn State whiteout. I got goosebumps. That was really freaking cool. I cannot wait to see that in real life. Any thoughts on that before we jump into the juicier stuff? I was just really impressed with the pageantry, like all of the little things that went in. We knew that was kind of the case, but to see more mascots and Big Red made an appearance. Yeah, so excited about all that stuff. Any thoughts on that before we head into the ratings part?
Yeah, I think you said it, pretty spot on. I think it was mostly just, there's a lot of pageantry with that and seeing things, but it feels so good to see it. And it's one of those where it's like, man, it's finally starting to happen. Like, we're only 3 weeks away from this after such a massive wait. These, the different sights and sounds, different reveal things. I tell you one thing that did stand out, though, and this has kind of been already talked about leading up to the game before we even saw any type of teaser trailers. The commentary in this game, they had Reese Davis and both Herbie and Reese Davis talking about it. There's going to be so many variations of different things, whereas like Madden, if I make the greatest player who ever lived have my career and I run for 800 yards, it's still, his 10th touchdown is still the same commentary as the first touchdown. This one feels like there is so many different variations. So I'm excited to see what kind of commentary it looks like and, different game crews on different games and stuff along those lines. Something cool there to just reinforce the hard work they've put in.
Yeah, and some of the stuff with like Kevin Connors saying he's going to come in the middle of the game. He'll also give highlights and breakdowns of games that have already been played before in your Dynasty. If your buddy lost to a computer, you can kind of go back and relive that with him, which is just hilarious. I love that. Really excited about that. But, that was still kind of when everybody was happy with EA just a couple of days ago. And now we kind of turn the page to something that's really interesting. I wrote a couple of pieces over at Heartland College Sports fixing the offensive and defensive ratings that we saw come out. And we can let's just tear the Band-Aid off first. Joe, I know you're a K-State guy. No offense, no 25 offense for the Wildcats. They are replacing a lot, but you almost kind of thought that they would at least be a fringe top 25 offense with Avery Johnson, with Dylan Edwards, with Cephas at wide receiver. Like, I know that name just because I remember watching him at Kent State. Whenever he played against Oklahoma, he was really good. Were you surprised about the offense not being in the top 25?
Yes, I'm pretty upset about it, to be honest. I mean, at 83 overall is the number 25 spot. I don't know how you see that team and don't think, all right, they are at bare minimum in the 20 to 25 range.
Yeah.
I'm not advocating against USC or Oklahoma or Florida State, UCF. I don't want to try to take any of those guys down, but this is a team where it makes me question, okay, what do they have Avery Johnson rated? Because that's the biggest question mark for me. I mean, I know they're replacing a lot up front, but Connor Riley's kind of established himself as one of the best offensive line coaches in the country, let alone the Big 12 Conference.
Yep.
So that I understand that, hey, you're replacing a lot on the O-line. That probably contributes to this, but you've got players at your skill position. You have DJ Giddens, who's probably going to be somewhere upwards of 90, if I had to take a guess, or close to it. I would assume he's K-State's highest ranked player, on either side of the ball. Dylan Edwards, who's going to be, I mean, he didn't do a ton at Colorado to the point where it's like, oh, he deserves a massive rating, but he's still a solid player and did have 600 all-purpose yards. He's super fast. And then your receiver
He
core,
played
you've
behind
got,
the worst offensive line in college football.
yeah, exactly. And he still
Which
put
we'll
up,
talk about that in a second.
absolutely we will, put up a ton of yards, ton of numbers at Colorado, which is like, we know Colorado. We'll talk about Colorado, but this is a top 25 offense. It is. I mean, the fact that they weren't even in the 83 overall conference, maybe they are, I guess. You had, 4 teams tied at 83 with Florida State, OU, Virginia Tech, and USC. They could be just not cracking that, but I was not happy about that. I think that team deserves more love, and it tells me a lot about where they sit with Avery Johnson. He's an unproven guy. They probably have him somewhere. I mean, you could have him potentially in the 70s. I mean, that's kind of the idea that they probably have him at, just because of his lack of experience at the college level. But that's still not enough that I'm just like, hey, they're outside the top 20. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, I, covering Oklahoma, I wrote something over on OU Insider as well. And I thought Oklahoma kind of got the shaft a little bit too, offensively. Now, most people point to the offensive line being an issue at Oklahoma. There's a lot of players needing to be replaced there. But what's interesting about the Sooners is when you look at the amount of starts that team has along the offensive line, they actually have 125 career starts among the players on the roster. When you compare that to like Ohio State, who has 79, or Georgia, who has 80 career starts along the offensive line, it's a big difference. And so I thought Oklahoma with Jackson Arnold, with a top 10, arguably top 5 wide receiver core, they, with Gavin Sawchuk coming back, had 100 yards in 5 straight games to finish the season last year. I thought Oklahoma kind of got the shaft on the offensive side of things, but there are definitely teams who got it worse or potentially got it better than the Sooners, and things need to be changed. Joe, the first and foremost, the one that sticks out like a sore thumb for everybody, Colorado. Colorado checks in as the number 8 offense in college football 25, but they are tied for 5th place. They are tied with Ohio State, LSU, Miami, which is questionable still, and Missouri for the 5th best offense in the game. What are we doing? Like, this really frustrates me. So the more I sat and thought about it last night, the more I realized, okay, sure, you want Colorado to be good in this game. It bodes well for EA if Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes are good in this game. It does. I mean, that's one of the hottest teams in the country. When they were winning last year, I mean, it was unbelievable, the TV numbers that they were pulling in. But this is outlandish. This team ranked 133rd nationally in rushing yards per game, 132nd in sacks last year allowed, 57th in scoring, 99th in yards per play. I think they were in the 100s in offensive success rate. I mean, just terrible. Like this was a really bad offense, and so. Like, I get Shadur Sanders and the hype around him and around Travis Hunter. Like, those guys are great, but how in the world do we sit here and believe that Colorado is an 89 overall offense when you've got Ohio State at that same rating? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, Joe.
Yeah, I think you said it best. Like, what are we doing? Honestly. You're telling me that a team that is probably going to win somewhere around 5 games this year, I mean, I don't want to say that they're not going to be great, but they're playing for bowl contention this year. That's really what they're shooting for. The teams, like there's people that don't watch Big 12 football that say, well, they're going to dominate the league because they don't watch Big 12 football and they only watch Colorado. That's not right. That's just not right. Like, this team is not that good of a football team, yet they've been bolstered up incredibly high in these rankings. And I get that, like you said, it's good for Coach Prime and it's good for the game if you have Colorado ranked high. A lot of people, I mean, honestly, if you look at a percentage, Colorado's probably going to be the most played with team just because you have Travis Hunter and you have Shador Sanders. but I need a third player on the offense that I know the name of. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And there's dudes on the offensive line. Like, are we going to sit here and say they completely filled every single hole in the offensive line through the portal and through the high school rankings this year? They didn't. There
Well,
are
not
still
just that.
gaps.
Like, did they fill the hole, and did they upgrade to the point that they're on par with a team like Ohio State? Like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
the Ohio State thing is ridiculous, man. What are we doing? That was you and I both picked, hey, that's the nation's number one offense. I think we both picked Ohio State to be up there.
Yep.
If not them, then it was Georgia. Instead, we get Colorado, LSU. I don't want to comment on Miami because they don't deserve to be an 89 overall, in my opinion. But
yeah.
Missouri, I get it. Senior quarterback, Luther Burden, a lot of skill position players. Are we saying one good quarterback, one good receiver makes a team an 89 overall? Like, that's my question here. What are we doing? Colorado has – I get the hype. I get the praise. I get everything. I can't name their tight end. Their front five is going to be a new front five every game because of just sustainability, injuries, and depth. There's not much depth on the offensive line or even on the defensive line for Colorado. And it showed last year. I mean, you saw them get continually beat. To say they're on par with 89 overall Ohio State is ridiculous. Ohio State got snubbed, and yet they're fifth on the list.
Yep. Yeah, Ohio State in my adjustments, I had them at 94 overall. They should have been tied for first. You know, whenever, and this is no slight, when Will Howard is like probably your most questionable playmaker, and he's not really a question, like that shows you just how good that offense should be. I mean, you're talking about some incredible wide receiver talent. You're talking about Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson at running back. Those are two of the best backs in the country, sharing the same backfield. I mean, yeah, they're just that team is set to just break scoreboards. So I was really surprised that they ended up where they did. Miami, yeah, like we'll kind of run down the list here a little bit with some of the ones I have problems with. Miami, I like Cam Ward. Like I'm really excited about what Cam Ward brings to Miami, but I think it's a bit early for that. So, you know, I mean, I could have seen like 85 or something. No.
Dabo without the portal.
I like Garrett Riley. I think things are going to get better. I think that he and Cade Klubnik are going to see eye to eye a little closer this year. But no, like that's not the 10th best. And the other thing is when you look at the rankings and you have all of these teams listed at 87 overall, Clemson is atop the list of the 87 overall offenses. So I don't agree with that for a second. Clemson was awful offensively at times last year. They looked better down the stretch a little bit, but I'm just not buying into a top 10. I'm not buying into a top 10 unit there. Ole Miss. Why is Ole Miss 13th? Why is that? I mean, Ole Miss should be ahead of everyone on that list outside of probably Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon, and maybe Alabama because of Milroe. Like I don't know. That, to me, that's a top 5 offense in the country. Lane Kiffin's still there, right? Like I'm not losing my mind. Lane Kiffin is still okay. So yes, NC State. What?
Yeah.
Like 87? No.
That's what I'm pissed about K-State not getting into love. Okay, they're replacing an aging veteran quarterback who was not very good. Brent Armstrong was not great. I mean, that's the way it is. And they didn't keep anybody through the portal. They lost a ton of dudes through the portal. And it's like, bro, we're getting just, I mean, beat down through this. This is tough.
Really like Grayson McCall. Loved him at Coastal Carolina. Really good quarterback. But that does not elevate you to a top 15 offense. Like it just doesn't. So that frustrates me. Texas A&M, like I get the roster talent. That's fine. I like Memphis. I like SMU. Those were two both really good, prolific offenses. I like UCF there. I think UCF might be the best rushing team in the country. Virginia Tech kind of catches me off guard a little bit. And here's the one that is probably going to surprise a lot of folks coming from me. USC at 25. It's too low. Like, it's too low. If we're being realistic, if we're being real, USC is probably a lock, as long as Lincoln Riley is in town, is a lock to be a top 20 offense. Like, I mean, they just are. He's the best offensive mind in college football. He has been for years, and he continues to stay ahead of the game. I think USC is going to have success offensively. But I'm going to use that as a segue because USC's offense is ranked as an 83 overall, and we flip up to defense, and there they are at 16th with an 86 overall rating on defense. Joe, I watched some USC football last year. It wasn't good. It definitely wasn't good on defense. I can't fathom how we would get to this point with all of the love and all of the respect and things that have gone into this game. Like you can tell the people really care at EA. Like they truly care that this is a college football game. And, in the grand scheme of things, when we're all playing Dynasty, none of these rosters are going to matter 2 years down the road in the Dynasty. But do it right. I mean, USC at 86 overall on defense is a 16th best. I mean, they're tied for the 14th best in the game on defense. And they're 3 points better defensively than they are offensively. Like, what are we doing? That one frustrates me. I honestly, team over team with defense, I honestly felt pretty good about the vast majority of these. I think Texas might be a hair high just from the guys that they lost to the draft.
What do you think about Clemson at 5?
Clemson's roster defensively is still full of NFL guys, so I like it. I think I would feel better about them being there defensively than they were offensively. I think that's a defense first team. But I will tell you, Clemson and Iowa should be flipped, and Iowa might potentially need to be higher than that. Joe, Iowa scored, I think, 15.7 points per game last year. They had a -7 turnover ratio, and they won 10 games. It's because their defense is really, really good, and for them to be, and the thing about it is they return 8 starters, and I think this is the oldest defense that Iowa has, like the most veteran-laden defense that Iowa has had in a long time. And so, again, like, what are we doing, guys?
Also, to jump in real quick, I mean, Iowa, by season's end, could very easily be a top 10 defense. I think that's it. Before I go on my mini K-State specific rant here, Colorado at 84.
Yeah, I was getting there.
Colorado. Sorry to jump in on you, but man,
that's bad.
Have they gotten better defensively than last season, or are we still doing the same recipe here?
I have a number in my mind, and I've already written it down, so I'm not going to be able to change it after the fact. What if you were in charge? If you were in charge of the ratings off the fly, knowing that they are probably a little bit better than they were last year, but still, what would you give Colorado as their overall for defense?
Probably an 80.
Okay. Yeah, I said 76.
And that's still an improvement. That's the craziest.
Correct. They were like a 68 last year. I mean, they were terrible. I don't know. Floor's yours. Yeah. Go ahead.
So if I had to ask you this question, and maybe this is just a huge testament to Joe Klanderman and the good job they've done on defense in Manhattan, does this specific K-State team, I know we haven't seen a lot of these dudes play, do they scream defense? The defense is the better part of these two units when you look at the team?
I don't think so.
Right? So K-State checks in at 84 here, and I'm glad they're on the list. I think Joe Klanderman's a great defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
They've got some names, but you lose Kobe Savage. It's a veteran guy in the secondary to Oregon. You lose some guys in the NFL. You've got different guys going around, but 84 overall here is probably going to be a sizable gap between what their offense is. So it tells me, you missed the offensive cut at 83, I think was the lowest ranked team. That doesn't compute to me. This is they're not a great offensive team, horrible defensive team. They're not that Colorado coded, USC coded thing. But it's just it's close enough in my mind that it should be a similar 85, 83 or an 86, 82. But going from nothing to 84 on defense, it was you're just giving us a favor here. This is just, hey, we're covering this one. Toss them in at the 24 spot is the word that I went to.
Yeah, that's kind of what it feels like. And the more that you sit and look at this list, LSU was atrocious defensively last year. The only reason they won 10 games is, 9 games before he opted out, Hayden Daniels. won the Heisman, so that helps. You've got North Carolina, which didn't play a lick of defense last year. Florida also struggled defensively. So I don't know. I was kind of taken aback by some of these. I don't mind most of them, but there were some issues which we kind of poked holes in most of them. There is one team that we haven't even mentioned yet because they haven't been on either of these rankings lists, and they won't be on the next one either that we talk about. And I think there's one fan base out there. There's one fan base out there that has the right to be absolutely ticked off. The Tennessee Volunteers were left totally off of either of these lists, and they're not on the team power rankings list either. I don't even know what to like. I don't even know where you start. That one's tough for me to stomach, because you have, yes, I know that Nico Iamaleava is a new he's a new commodity, right? But we just watched him lead the Vols to a 35-0 win over Iowa. That was the first time. That was the most points that Iowa had given up since 2022. And it's Josh Heupel. Did we just forget that Josh Heupel is one of the best offensive minds out there? And then defensively, they've got arguably the best defensive player in the country in James Pierce coming off the edge. Yeah, I don't know. That really surprises me. Yeah,
they deserve like a letter from EA Sports apologizing or something. But It does circle around that conversation. And honestly, OU on the offensive list supports it a little bit. It makes me wonder what they have all these young guys at quarterback, and how much that's dragging down these overalls.
Yeah,
because OU's offense, I mean, what were they at? I think it was an 83, maybe
83. Yep,
83. It makes me question, what do they have Jackson Arnold at? Because the receiver core around them is a top 5 unit in football. I mean, they are top 10 football. It makes me wonder, what are these young guys at? Are they all sitting there at 78, 77, 76?
No idea.
Just dragging that down. Because Nico's probably somewhere around that, even though the amount of hype he has. Avery Johnson, that same thing. You see some of these young guys that are like stepping in after veteran dudes go to the league or get drafted. It's like, dude, what are we doing? We're just saying, they'll be a little bit worse. Moving on. Quick one.
Yeah. That's a good point, because you kind of look through the offensive power rankings. Georgia, veteran quarterback. Oregon, veteran. Alabama, veteran. Texas, veteran. Ohio State, veteran. You just kind of go on down the list there, and it's guys that have started for a while. I mean, I can't think of who would be the first sophomore. Arizona's 15 would be your first, and he's a beast. I mean, that kid
threw for 3,000 yards as a freshman.
So good. So maybe they do have the young guns a little low.
I think they've got to.
That might be something worth noting. Now, I do think it's something that we need to bring up, is the fact that there is set to be at least one update before this season actually starts. So that'll be interesting, but these are subject to change. And I wouldn't be surprised, as we kind of look towards the overall team power ratings or power rankings. I wouldn't be surprised if Colorado starts off this game at launch good, and then they get the old hammer at mid-season whenever they're probably 2-6. So I don't know. I think that might be the reset might be pretty tough, because we've seen it in Madden before where teams get adjusted mid-season and it makes a pretty big difference. But I wouldn't expect anybody to have it worse than Colorado by mid-season when it comes to the adjustments. When we look at the top 25 power rankings, Joe, what outside of Colorado, which I think we've given them enough of this show at this point. Well, outside of Colorado, what stands out to you? What's the first thing on that list of top 25 that stands out to you?
There's a couple of things, but I mean, I do question a little bit Michigan at number 11. I know they're losing a lot. I know they've got a new coach. Guys, they haven't lost a game in a long time. They're very good at football. Philosophically, the whole program is instilled to win games. Not saying 88 overall is disrespect, but we're talking about defending national champions. team that has beat a ton of people. I know it's new quarterback, know it's new coach. So Michigan, I thought, got dragged down a little bit in that. I could at least see them being in the 90 category if I had to take a guess. They could be that quarterback thing a little bit as well, but that sticks out a little bit. I think, like, USC still as a whole is weird to me. Like you said,
Yeah.
the offense being ranked as low, not as low as they are, but like being lower than defense should never happen for USC, even if they allocate all these resources and time to defense. So the 87 overall, you'd think, all right, they got a 90 overall offense and an 81 overall defense, and then it splits out. Like, those are the two that kind of scream at me, but I'm upset at the fact that we've got 5 Big 12 teams on this list, 4 of which K-State would picked ahead, and we're not in the top 25, but I can be beside myself. I've given them enough on the K-State front.
So I look at this. I don't have a problem with the top 5. Texas, I do think Texas is getting the benefit of the doubt, but again, like, when Texas is good, college football is better. Like that's just a fact. Clemson at 6. I like how Clemson is run. Like, I understand the philosophy with which Dabo is trying to do things, but I think Clemson's a bit overrated there. I think we're on the back end of Clemson being the dynasty that they were just a few years ago. I think Brent Venables leaving there has changed quite a bit about Clemson. So curious about that one. I look at Ole Miss, and just jumping back to the defensive power rankings, Ole Miss didn't show up on the defensive power rankings list. They went out and got Walter Nolan, who was the best player that's ever hit the transfer portal, defensive tackle. They got Prince. I'm not even going to try it. Princely, I can't even say his last name.
Yep.
Uman Malin, I'm probably absolutely butchered that. But he was one of the best pass rushers in the SEC from Florida. Trey Amos, Isaiah Hamilton. They loaded up on the defensive side of the ball in the transfer portal. Lane Kiffin emptied out his life savings to ensure that he was going to be in title contention this year. So Ole Miss at 15 doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think that's, again, I think the defense is better than they're getting credit for. I think the offense is better than they're getting credit for. I think Ole Miss is a top 10 team easy.
Them too.
Yeah, and A&M, again, like, head scratcher. I don't know what they're doing there. Again, Tennessee's like a top 15 team in my mind. I don't understand that. I don't know. I'm really curious to see how this all ends up playing out, because apparently EA they claim to have been using PFF's grading system as how they are doing their rankings, how they do their ratings for players. If that were the case, then Colorado would be somewhere in like the mid 70s.
Yep.
But we'll see. We'll see the adjustments. Parting shots, anything before we head out, anything that sticks out or anything you're looking forward to?
I got a rapid fire question for you.
Okay, let's hear it.
Whose defense would you rather have, Ole Miss or Colorado?
Ole Miss. No question, Ole Miss.
Whose defense would you rather have, USC or Ole Miss?
Ole Miss, no question.
So that's an 86 overall defense that we're taking Ole Miss over, who didn't check in on the list at all.
Right.
I just want to put that out there, just on behalf of the people.
Whose offense would you rather have?
Sir.
Like Ole Miss or okay, hold on. Here's a question. Let me ask you this. I'm going to flip this on you a little bit.
All right.
Colorado and Tennessee are playing a neutral site game in Dallas. Who's favored?
Tennessee.
By like 2 touchdowns, right?
13.5.
Proven. That's all I needed to say.
Yep. On the sideline, you say that guy's there, they're winning this game.
Correct. So, yeah, interesting stuff. We will kind of check back in next week on some of this. I doubt there's going to be anything as far as updates go, but we do have, it was confirmed today as part of the release, we do have a Dynasty deep dive coming next week. So we will finally get a chance to see what Dynasty looks like. Our friend over at Extra Points, Matt Brown, last week when he joined us, mentioned that the Dynasty deep dive was over 20,000 words. So we're talking about some serious detail Really excited about that. Cannot wait to dive in. And before we leave, we had a promise the last time we were on the pod together, our emergency pod, we didn't bring this up, but last week we posted the vote. We posted who the ultimate team in Dynasty was. And after almost 400 votes total over all of the social media accounts, Kennesaw State is the winner. Kennesaw State is actually who comes out on top. So, Joe, you don't know this yet, but when we start a dynasty for Heartland College Sports, you will have to use Kennesaw State to begin with.
All right.
So, yeah, fun stuff. Really fun. I was surprised. I honestly thought Western Kentucky was going to be the team to come out, but I don't know, that's okay. I'll take Big Red. Like, that's fine. But anyways, Joe, thanks for joining me, man. It's fun. It's exciting. I cannot wait for this game to drop, literally like 3 weeks away. So looking forward to it. I appreciate you once again for coming on, man.
Anytime, man. Thanks for having me.
That's going to do it for us today. Thank you guys so much for checking in and watching the show. If you're listening in on Spotify or iTunes, wherever you're listening in from, if you don't mind, give us a 5-star rating and review if you feel we deserve it. No pressure. We do appreciate that. And if you're over on the YouTube channel, just make sure you're subscribed. That helps us out a ton, helps us to just continue to grow and keep doing this thing. And we've got a few weeks left until this game drops. Once it does, we've got some things on the back burner that are going to come forward. Really excited about what that's going to look like. But thank you guys once again, and we'll catch you next time. This has been the In the Game podcast.